Okay, before I get off on a tangent too much with these tomahawks or the discussion of tomahawks, I'm going to do a lecture type video to cover what I know about tomahawks and then move on from here so I don't spend too much time. I'm going to put the tomahawk idea to the side so I can work on the actual atlatl darts and the setup for the tests. The hardest part for me right now is getting set up for those tests. I've got to do 100 things before I can do one thing. I'm sure you know how that goes. Okay, so what I've seen so far is first off, I don't have any evidence for the type of tomahawk that I showed in the video. That's from my imagination. Okay. The idea of putting a four-shafted point into the end of a stick to form a tomahawk is just something that I derived from looking at other Native American weapons. Okay, so I made a tomahawk similar to this. Where I put in a hafted point. Okay, there's no real evidence for this, but there are weapons in the archaeological record that I would consider in the same group as a tomahawk in the common vernacular sense of the word. The sources that I've been studying, some say the tomahawk was invented by Native Americans. Some say the tomahawk was adapted by Native Americans, and some say the tomahawk originated with Europeans. So there's controversy there. Okay, as far as I can tell, a traditional looking tomahawk is actually a European item. It's a European trade item. Okay, and they came from I think primarily from something called a boarding axe. All right. This might not be a good representation. The boarding axes, let me see, it's spelled Boarding. It was nicknamed this because the navies at the time, especially during the 17th century, used an axe like this during operations of boarding enemy vessels. That was one use for them. But before that, this design existed in Europe, okay, for much longer than that. But these were used aboard ship either defensively or offensively, or also for fighting fires aboard ship. Okay, that's where they have the spike back here. It makes it easy to pry apart things like doors and obstacles to get people out of a confined space that may be on fire. Okay, of course the axe, this is actually pretty light. The top of the axe is very lightweight. All right, it's not a splitting type of axe head. It's actually, from the top view, it's actually pretty flat. Okay, so it wasn't a splitting type of axe where from the top view, a splitting axe would have more of a pronounced taper. Okay, much thicker here so that it would wedge the wood apart. Now, these axes were designed primarily for cutting various things. It was a very versatile tool. It could cut rope, it could cut wood, it could cut arms off. You know, it was designed for cutting, so it had a thin blade that would slice through various things easily. Okay. Now there were various designs on this. Let's see if I can draw one better. Some had a crescent type blade. You know what I mean? Crescent type. Some had straight. Straight blades. They all seem to have, well, not all, but most seem to have this reinforcing band for the handle, so it wouldn't get chopped off or it wouldn't break. Okay, and these handles on here on these boarding axes were very long, so they could be used two-handed on the originals. Okay, later on they were shortened for trade items and they left off this reinforcing band. Okay, so it was usually in two different styles, you know, with a straight blade or a crescent blade, but always with the spike in the beginning. Later on they adapted it with a pipe. And these were made by artisans for the trade, market, okay, where there would be a pipe on the end with a hollow handle and much shorter than the original boarding axe. Okay, and some boarding axes actually had a spike okay on the top. Now this would be what they called a halberd type boarding axe, and this goes back again, it goes back into European history. They were not only used on ships for the Navy, they were also used during land combat, okay, especially with these halberd type spikes on the top. Okay, now these spikes on the back could be curved or straight, all right, sharp on the edges I think, or only sharp at the point. All right, so this is the basic history of what the Tomahawk was based on. All right, they made these here lighter, even lighter than these, and often with an adjustment of the design back here, either with a hammer, a spike also, maybe not as long as a boarding axe, or a pipe. Okay, I think sometimes they left this off entirely as well, so all you have is just the blade itself. Okay, I've seen this type also, where it's just like that, and these are considered tomahawks. All right, so but the Native Americans, their weapons, as far as I can tell, all the research that I've seen, their weapons were inserted into a sturdy club-like object. I should say the blades, okay? They were inserted, like, let's say this is a celt, Okay. Celt or Celt, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And there was a void in the wood here where it was inserted, and this taper would cause a friction fit. Okay. Different from, you know, this outside ring that went over the wood. Native American weapons always had the blade or the item that was the cutting surface or whatever inserted into the handle through a void, and that it even includes this type of macaweedle where blades were inserted into the wood. Okay, I have not seen any tomahawks in the archaeological record before, let's say, before the 18th century that have the characteristic lashing like this. Okay, I would consider this a modern interpretation of the tomahawk with these rawhide lashings or whatever. This, I don't see any archaeological evidence for this other than tourist items. This is the typical arrangement that I've seen. Okay. So the simplest version of this would look like that, with the stone blade, so to speak, inserted into a void with a friction fit. Okay, friction fit, not lashing. Okay, so I would say, in my opinion, this is not a tomahawk. This is a modern tourist item. Okay, this is a Native American item. Now, these also existed in other parts of the world at the time. In the Stone Age, Europeans had celts, okay, inserted. They were made of stone or metal, or, okay, I could get into this. You can also look up copper culture in the Americas, okay, where Native Americans also used copper besides stone to produce celts. All right, they'd use hammered copper found in the Great Lakes region most of the time. So they had items like this. They were similar to the European boarding axe, but not quite. Okay, so if you go back farther in time, you see a lot of these blades inserted into a handle, either this way or this way. That's where I'm getting the idea of inserting it into a handle. Okay, with a friction fit, because a lot of these celts, a lot of these blades, either copper or stone, in the Americas, were inserted and held in place with a friction fit, not like this. Okay, so let's see, what I've seen so far, seen various Native American styles. See if I can do these from memory. I've seen simple arrangements like this, or it's just a piece of wood with a spike attached. Okay, I would consider that a tomahawk. I've seen examples where there's actually a club. This is the front of the club here. The direction of the strike is this way. I've seen these, which are just clubs in the eastern US, but they also sometimes have a spike in the front. I would consider this a tomahawk as well. I've seen an adaptation. Some call these gun stock tomahawks, where it's an angled piece of wood, and you have a blade here. Again, the handle is down here. Sometimes you have multiple blades. Okay. I've seen up to 3 blades on some of these. What they call gun stock tomahawks. I would consider that a tomahawk as well. The Macaweedles, there's a large variety of these. Now this is primarily in the eastern United States, okay, and maybe even northeastern. I don't know about the southeast. I imagine these were also used in that area. This type with spikes. The Macaweedle is Central America. Okay, long or short, two-handed or one-handed. We're lucky that we have a lot of Aztec paintings that show these. Now they don't always have the blades, okay? But that's the most common arrangement. All right, obsidian blades. I haven't seen any references that say that they have anything else but obsidian, but I'm sure they could make them out of chert or any other material. Okay. So this is, I don't know how to spell the Macaweedle, but you can look those up. They also have pictures of, and I would consider these small ones tomahawks, and these I guess fighting swords. Or swords, right? Maybe a small sword, long sword. Anyway, I would consider this a tomahawk because it has inserted blades. I've also seen pictures of Macaweedles either with single spikes on each side or multiple spikes. Okay, short or long, inserted into the sides. Let's see what else. I've seen different sizes too. They don't always have to be very wide like this. Okay, they could be kind of narrow. They also, I've seen a couple illustrations where they have very wide blades like this. I don't know what they're made out of. Okay, I think I was going to say this before. The materials for these inserts could be bone, antler, shark teeth, I think. I'm not too sure about shark teeth. Obsidian, chert, flint. Okay, and copper for Native American weapons. These are all Native American weapons I've taken from memory. What else have I seen? Well, okay. Now all these blades are inserted. Okay. There's also the type of tomahawk that incorporates stone attached to a stick with rawhide passed over the top. Okay, and these can have smooth contours, completely smooth, or they can have a groove of some sort. You know what I mean? They can be grooved within that space here. And they can also have, they may or may not have a hole drilled into the bottom. Okay. They may or may not. It might be just smooth or a hole drilled in the bottom. They could be grooved all the way around, or they could be, it's a full, they could be 3/4. You get the idea. But it has these, I would consider these more in the category of war clubs instead of tomahawks that have blades or spikes. And these are usually of stone. Okay. I think they can be made of wood as well. So we're going to put that as a question mark. I think you can make these war club heads out of wood. And I'm sure you could make them out of ivory and bone. If you found a large enough, maybe antler. Okay. I'm not too sure about these. I haven't done much research on this type. But you get the idea. The Plains Indians would use this type of war club. I don't know if I would consider this a tomahawk. But, some people might put this in the same category. Okay, some of these also have a hammer or a maul type end on one side. Okay, so I would consider those also war clubs, although I haven't done much research on these. Like I said, I could be wrong on that. This would be a top view. The side view on these is something like this. Okay. Where this would be sharpened. This would be the sharp end here. Okay. I haven't seen very many like this. I think I've seen maybe one that has something similar. Maybe it was more constricted. You know what I mean? Instead of having a straight out blade, it was more constricted like this. Kind of angled to make it thinner at the tip and not so squarish. All right, but I would consider these war clubs, like I said, and not really in the same category as a tomahawk, in my opinion. Okay, that's just my opinion. Okay, so let's see. But the main characteristics of tomahawks would be, a certain formula, I guess. I don't know. The head would be light and the handle would be long. Okay? So light and long. And like I said, designed for cutting. And it may or may not have a spike, but the spike was pretty common. With metal tipped tomahawks, the spike was pretty common, but it didn't have to be part of it. All right. I think that's it. It covers most of it. So, in closing, what I'm going to do is, there's various types of hafted points that I want to do. All right. The most obvious one, of course, is the traditional hafted point like this, and then construct some sort of handle I prefer a mecha weedle inspired type, right? But I also want to do some experimenting with perhaps blunts, okay, or just spikes, okay, friction fit on that end, but it's just a spike by itself made of antler or bone. Also, instead of hafting the point this way, let's say we have just a triangle, okay, simple triangle. Instead of hafting it this way, how about doing this? Where you flip the point around, so now the point is inside the handle, and this end over here is the cutting or the business end. Okay, so I'm going to do these different types and experiment with these. All right, so that's where this is going in my video series for testing. Okay, all right, that's it.